Okay, so hi Giles. Great to see you here. I'm,
Hi.
I'm joined with Giles Alexander, who is recently written a book called You the Daddy. Also has a background in communications and started the very successful You the Daddy blog, which covers a range of areas that I guess dads and dads to be will take a lot from. So definitely worth checking that out. We'll provide links to that site after this chat that we have. But yeah, Giles, really over to you, and just to talk a bit more about your parenting experience so far. Maybe that would be a good place to start,
Yeah,
and but family life in general. It'd be great to hear a bit more about that from you.
happy to. Thanks for having me, Henry. So I became a dad in 2016 for the first time, and it was a hugely exciting time. I mean, I'd always wanted to have a big family. I come from a big family myself, and that was when I launched the blog when my wife found out that we were pregnant that first time, right at the beginning of 2016.
Yeah,
And since then, we've had three kids. We've got two boys and a girl, ranging from 7 to nearly 2,
yeah,
and married to my amazing wife Rosie. We moved out of London a few years ago to get a bigger place, and really so that we could bring up the kids outside of the city.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, my parenting journey has, I think, like most people, been a roller coaster ride. I mean, I think being a dad is the best job in the world, but it's also, one of the toughest,
yeah,
but also most important. We all come into it from the same starting point. No qualifications, no
yeah,
real experience, no real clue what the next few years are gonna to have in store for us.
yeah,
So we all have to go on a big journey to in fatherhood and in parenting as a whole.
yeah,
And I think it takes a few years to crack that. I think at the beginning I was try to read as much as I could, try to be as hands-on as I could, but working a full-time job,
yeah,
whilst also having parenting responsibilities. It is a very exhausting time, and I think it takes some time to really get into the swing of things. And I guess now, three kids in, nearly 8 years into parenting, I feel like I've,
mm,
I've cracked it. But that it, there's a lot of support that new dads need, especially,
yeah.
which hopefully my blog and now the book can help that process.
Definitely. I mean, as we had a brief chat before getting onto this, just saying how amazing it was that you were able to, alongside a full-time job and all the duties that you have as being a dad and a husband, to actually work on, well, first of all, the blog, which is a pretty
Yeah,
comprehensive site covering lots of areas. And then on top of all of that, to then put a book together, which is based on all your, I guess, hard-won wisdom through the 8 years so
yeah,
far that you've been a dad.
that's
But
quite exhausting.
yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, I'm not sure I would have the energy levels to do all of that myself. But that's so kudos to you. But
Thank
I
you.
would just maybe it's interesting for particularly fathers to be.
Mm,
We always, when we speak to guests, to try to get a sense of the challenges, the particular kind of pinch points that they've experienced, or things that they've found quite challenging at various
yeah.
steps along the way within your parenting journey so far,
Mhm.
so that they can perhaps kind of get a bit of an insight into that and maybe even
Mm.
prepare themselves for what might be coming down the road. I don't know if you have any kind of anecdotal kind of evidence or just some experience, both the highs and the lows. If you want, don't have to go into the lows
Yeah,
necessarily,
yeah.
but yeah, if anything around that to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think in those early days, the big struggle is the lack of sleep.
Yeah,
And I think we just have to remind everyone that it is a really full on time, those early days and months with a newborn, and you will get through it. Every child does learn to sleep through the night eventually.
mm,
Um, it's also can be quite a challenging time for new dads, because especially if you're going back to work and your partner's taking the year or a longer period for maternity leave, because you are quite sort of taken out of that parenting world, for large chunks of the day,
yeah,
which can affect how you bond with your baby. It can affect your relationship with your partner. It can affect, how sort of confident you are in your role as a dad. And sometimes there can be a bit of a sense of a sort of, the baby doesn't need me, it needs mom.
Yeah.
And I'm getting in the way, or I'm doing things wrong. And I think my advice to new dads is always to try and get involved as much as you can. Remember that just because one parent's working from home and the other's going out to the office,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean the one who's at home with the baby should be working 24/7.
Mm.
Get involved as soon as you get home. Try and make it home early, and try and get some more flexible hours from work, so you can be there for the really stressful, busier times of day, which is first thing in the morning and bath time at night. There are ways you can get involved with the night feeds. Even if your partner's breastfeeding, actually, you can still be up and help with the other side of breastfeeding. So once the feeding's done, helping to settle the baby, changing the nappy, putting them down. I think there's an assumption that I definitely had when I first became a dad, which was, I've had an exhausting day at work, and you've been at home with the baby, and you can have a bit more downtime and there's a bit more time to yourself. I think that's quite a naive viewpoint that maybe lots of new dads, me included, had. And actually, if you were to spend an entire day or a week looking after your baby on their own, you'd very quickly realize that being the parent doing that is far more tiring than a day at work, whether that's behind a desk or on a construction site. Even the monotony and routine of looking after a baby is exhausting. But I think ultimately it's all worth it. Those early days are challenging, and the book doesn't sugarcoat things at all. I've included the warts and all elements of new parenting, but actually there are so many highs during throughout your whole parenting journey, but especially in those early days. When your baby first starts talking, and that first time they laugh at you or smile at you when you come into the room, when you have been trying to get them down, or they're really upset and they just completely settle in the kind of comfort and safety of your arms. It really makes you feel like a dad, and you have this incredible bond with this tiny person that you've just made. But there is just so many highs, and just keep remembering them and enjoying them as much as you can. And my advice to new dads is always, be around as much as you can. Hearing about your children's firsts on a Zoom, on a WhatsApp message, or a sort of stolen FaceTime call, like during your lunch break, it's not the way you want to go. And I think I missed so many things with my firstborn because I was just poured myself into work, seeing myself as that provider for the family. But actually, for my second and third, partly thanks to the pandemic, I was just around so much more. And I can just see the difference that it makes in them and our relationship. I think it's so important, to think about ourselves as not just a financial provider for our families, but to provide, in every possible way.
I think being as present as you're able to be is it sounds like an obvious point to make, but it makes all the difference. And also, as you say, try to sort of share the load as best you can, and not compare your work life or office work life with the home work life, because it's not a comparison. They're going through different types of mental and physical exhaustion, which are equally as exhausting as whatever you may be feeling in a work setting. But I think the one thing that we sometimes sort of try to point out is that it is also very normal to sometimes feel completely overwhelmed by everything, balancing that role between being a dad, a husband, and trying to be the best versions of those that you're able to be, trying to meet those sort of expectations on yourself, but also perhaps that are put on you by others as well, is quite an intense experience. And it's very normal to feel quite kind of overawed and overwhelmed by that. And it's important to kind of take the time that you may need for yourself, just to sort of maybe even step back a bit, at times,
Mm,
just to allow yourself to mentally reset and recover, and then go back in fresh with a, re-energized and ready for all those things that need your time and attention. But
yeah, I
that's that,
totally agree, and actually I dedicated a whole chapter in the book to
yeah,
the importance of
I
looking
saw
after
that. Yeah.
yourself, because I think most new parents will experience burnout at some point during the
Mm,
first few years of parenthood.
yeah,
We all do have big expectations for ourselves.
of course.
Society has big expectations. Our partners
Yeah,
expect a lot from us. And I think, if you are constantly tired and, running on empty, you can't be the kind of dad you want to be. So
yeah, yeah.
actually looking after yourself, taking that time, but
Mm,
also giving your partner time to do that as well
yeah, yeah.
is so
It's
important
vital.
for your relationship and your family.
Totally. And I guess, going back to the book,
Mm,
you've obviously got a lot of experience, your personal experience, and you've presumably, through your work with the blog, and I guess having within your own friendship network and things like that,
mm,
have had a lot of exposure to other people's experiences as well
mm.
of parenthood, and therefore that puts you in a very good position to kind of extol this information that you've
Yeah.
gathered over time about how best to go about, the fatherhood in
Mhm,
particular, not just parenthood, but specifically fatherhood.
mhm.
What led you to want to put that down into a book and to write this book?
Yeah. Well, actually, when I was approached to write it by my publisher, and my
Okay.
initial thought was to say no, only because I just couldn't think how, with three kids and a full-time job, I would actually
Yeah.
have time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, talking to my wife, she really encouraged me to say yes, and we talked a lot about it and thought actually this is an important book to write.
Yeah.
Um, there is just it's like you said, it's such an overwhelming time for new dads, and there's so much to get your head around and not much time to do it. And I'm always approached by new parents, mums and dads, asking
Yeah.
for advice, as a more experienced parent, of
Yeah.
how what they should do during pregnancy to support their partner, and how to look after a newborn, how to get them into a routine. And yes, of course, there are books on the market that cover these topics, but
Mm,
I've read a lot of them myself. And I guess the problem that I always found was there's potentially too many books, and each of them covers a different topic, and they're hundreds
mm,
of pages each.
mm,
And there's kind of too much information out there to digest, which
yeah.
I really wanted to address in this book and
Mm,
make it much more practical, hands-on, simple instructions to follow, covering every area without going into too much information or the
yeah.
psychology behind everything. It was more of a, what do I do in this situation? How can I avoid having to Google the answer to something at 3 in the morning, when
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
when I need it. Um, so that was important to me, but also I felt like, it was really key that this book wasn't just about my experiences.
Mm,
So it's really is the amalgamation of everything that I've learned, personally, but also things that I've seen my wife do,
yeah.
things I've heard from discussions with friends. I've interviewed so many experts throughout the years for the blog,
Yeah.
on everything from breastfeeding and hypnobirthing to weaning, potty training, that actually I've brought in so much of that into the
Yeah.
book. So it's not just, it's very much not my experience specifically, but
Yeah.
it's everything that I've learned, and read about, condensed into 280 pages.
Yes.
And I was really pleased to include as well, 5 different stories in the book from
Mm,
dads who have had completely different experiences to me. So, I've got there's a stay-at-home dad that's written a section. There's a adoptive dad to talk about the adoption
yeah.
process. A dad whose children have really severe food allergies and the challenges that creates.
Mm,
Someone who's absolutely smashed it in terms of the work-life balance, but who experienced really severe burnout,
right.
and a dad who's you going through the challenges of co-parenting in a blended
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
So there's a real mix there for every situation that you
Yeah.
might come across in your years of fatherhood, that is all kind of wrapped up neatly in the book.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And were you able to reach out to your blogging community to kind of get to ask people to put their stories forward for you to kind of
Yeah, so
reference? Yeah.
the dads that I've included are all people that I know are great writers and great dads who I've known
Yeah.
for years through Instagram. We used to meet up regularly and be a bit more of a sort of dad support group for each other, because I know there's so many of them for mums, but actually
Yeah.
dads supporting dads is a relatively new phenomenon, which obviously Hank is doing a great amount of work for as well. Um, but increasingly, I think there's more of a recognition as dads are stepping up and being more hands-on in the parenting role, that actually we
Hmm.
need those same support networks, and we need to be able to vent and share advice with each other on what's working and what's not,
Yeah.
and just be there for each other.
I think that's absolutely what we're seeing as well. But one thing that we're seeing a slight, I think, a shift with is specifically British dads, or that UK dads being more receptive to that kind of thing, and
Mm,
being a bit more open about their experiences, and a willingness to share, and a bit more wearing their heart on their sleeve, basically, and being a bit
yeah,
more emotional about the whole thing than perhaps they ever were, in a way
yeah,
that I mean, not to stereotype too much, but American dads are very much more kind of upfront about this kind of thing, and are easily sort of engage with it, or historically have engaged
mm,
with conversations around this slightly better perhaps than we have. And I put myself in the camp of a guy that doesn't easily kind of or at least used to be the type of guy that doesn't easily want to share and sort of go into detail around the challenges
mm,
and difficulties that I've faced.
yeah,
Or even, very happy to talk about the good stuff, but less so about all the
yeah,
stuff that I'm facing that isn't quite so good.
yeah,
And I think we're seeing, and maybe it's the sort of the movement in mental health in general that
mm,
is becoming more of an open discussion in this
I think
country,
so.
that, and then more specifically with fatherhood, guys are more willing to do that as well, which is a positive step, I think.
Yeah, and I guess
Um,
the more of us that do it, it encourages others to join in.
yeah,
So it kind of gives you a license to talk about it more openly.
yeah,
There definitely was, when we were growing up, much more of that kind of lads culture,
yeah,
sort of maybe a bit of toxic masculinity, which has definitely softened over the years.
yeah.
And I think, dads playing more of an active role in family life has would have helped with that.
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. I wondered, like, obviously you're very experienced in the kind of birth to eight, I think is your oldest. Is that, did you say seven or
Yeah,
eight?
yeah, yeah.
Same, similar sort of age range of my boys as well. We're very
Mhm.
much in the same kind of sort of part of the parenting journey, I guess
Yeah.
you want to call it that. What out of interest, we've got a lot more challenges on the horizon in terms of the
Yes.
different age developmental phases they'll be going through in the different
Yeah.
ages, the teens and all the things that are
Yeah.
coming down the road for us. Do you have a kind of an idea about where you'll be looking for help and kind of resources and information to help with those challenges
Yeah.
as and when they arise?
Yeah. I mean, I think fortunately, there's, a lot of um, parents that are online that have older children who have been writing about
Yeah,
these things a lot more. I mean, I'm the youngest of four children in my family, so I have, my nephews and nieces range from 2 years old to 18. So
yeah, okay,
I've seen that transition happening in my own nephews and
yeah,
nieces and my own family, which I think
absolutely,
I can learn from. I
yeah,
think, we've also, I don't know about you, but I think most of us still feel like we're about 18, even though, we're white, wizened old men by now. But, I think we still remember quite vividly, as most people do, our teenage years, and
Mm,
what we went through, and the changes that we went through emotionally, physically. And I think maybe it's easier to relate to a teenager. I mean, it's difficult to be the parent in that situation. I'm
mm.
definitely concerned about how that's going to go. Um, but I've
Yeah,
definitely, with my own kids, been putting in place certain things in our relationship, which hopefully will have a positive impact during those teenage years. I
mm,
make a real effort with my boys. I mean, my daughter's the youngest at 2, so we've got a bit
Yeah.
more time till she hits the teenage years. But
Yeah.
been putting real effort into kind of telling my boys that I love them every day. You know, encouraging them to share how they're feeling with me.
Mm.
Never, you know, making time to actually listen, which
Yeah.
I think if you put in those foundations at a young age, I'm hoping that that will
Yeah.
mean that when we hit those teenage years, there's a little bit more openness, and a stronger
Yeah.
relationship to actually have more difficult conversations when the time comes.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like maybe, you know, I didn't have that similar type of relationship with my dad when I was little, because he was just the provider. You
Yeah.
know, I always remember him, you know, in his office upstairs, you know, working all
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
So I've made a real effort to do that, and I hope it does make a difference. But who
Yeah.
knows? We'll have to wait and
Yeah.
see.
I think that's right. You kind of you have most of us are lucky enough to have a role model of a father to learn from, and there you know you can to look at your own experiences and take from that the good parts hopefully, and then but also be mindful of the not so great parts and try
Mm,
to kind of work on those within your own relationships with your own kids, and that's a useful sort of reference point, I guess.
mm.
But yeah, perhaps we can expect another book from you know once you've navigated those years after
Who
you know.
knows? Never say never.
I think just to round things off, and this is a slightly sort of
Mm,
bit of a cliche sort of topic perhaps to cover, but just if you had any, and don't say just go and read the book. Do you have any
yeah.
top tips for dads to be that you might sort of highlight? I know you said earlier a few things
Mm,
around making sure that they're as present as they're able to be and sort of sharing
mm,
the load when they come back from work and things like that. Whether there
yeah.
were anything else that sort of springs to mind in that slightly nerve-wracking run up to you know when you're about to have your first kid and it
Mm.
hasn't quite happened yet and you're sort of slightly panicking, going out as if it's going to be the last time you're ever allowed out of the house to do anything, and sort of that slightly
Yeah.
self-destructive phase. Was there anything that sprung to mind that you know people should sort of either be reassured by or prepare for, or something like that that might help them?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, don't go into it expecting an easy ride. You know, parenting is tough. You know, it is a series of highs and lows. And a lot of people say, you know, it does get easier. I'm not sure that that's actually true. I think you just get better at it.
Yeah.
And I think you get more confident the more you do it and the more experience you have. It's like starting any new job. You know, at the
Mm.
beginning, you're the fresh face. You don't really know what you're doing, but you very quickly get up to speed. And actually having this little person that you've created, you know, there will be so many amazing times that you will look back on and, you know, wish that you were back in the trenches. You know, at the time it feels like
Yeah.
everything is going on and everything's difficult, but actually there are so many moments of joy and happiness to be found
Yeah.
in those early days of parenting. So try and, you know, it is a tough old slog, but you will get through it and you will think back on it in really positive ways. I think as well, you know, I think the more involved we are as dads in parenting, the better it is for everyone. The better it is for our partners, the more supported they feel. You know, the less it impacts their career or their aspirations. You know,
Mm.
their mental health isn't so impacted, which will improve your relationship massively. The
Mm.
more it'll help your kids. You know, they'll have both parents around to and feel that support and feel like they can go to both of you for the same thing or different things.
Yeah.
um, and it'll also, you know, help society as a whole.
Mm.
I think there's a definitely was a perception when I first became a dad that I needed to just work hard
Mm.
and you know, be able to afford the big car so we can have another baby, or be able
Yeah.
to move out of our flat so we can continue on that kind of path of the working dad.
Mm.
But actually, I encourage every new dad, you know, whether uh, who I manage at work or who
Mm.
I meet online, you know, is this really this is a time that you're not going to get back.
Mm.
it's a really special time for you as a man turning into a father.
Mm,
And actually, is this really the time that you need to be smashing the lights out at work and going for that
yeah,
big promotion, or could you take a
yeah,
step back just for a couple of years to really
yeah,
enjoy and be involved in this time?
yeah,
And I encourage every new dad to take as much time off as they can during that
yeah.
first year or first few years of their child's life to really be there and be an involved, active, hands-on dad.
Because it's crazy how fast it all goes as well. I mean, in
Yeah,
the blink of an eye, you're suddenly, suddenly I've got an 8-year-old, and you're sort of, you're out of
yeah,
those moments of, and you hopefully reflect back at the kind of amazing milestone moments that you witness
mm,
along the way, and yeah, but it does go very quickly, and it is always, it's time is it's never badly spent by being around as much as you possibly can to help them develop, but also build on that relationship that you're wanting to have between the father and the son,
100%.
as in the best that it could be.
Mm.
Well, Giles, thank you so much for talking to us. I think that's probably been, covered a lot of ground on that. We'll
Thank you,
obviously put
Henry.
a link to as to where you can get You the Daddy, as well as the blog. Yeah, in the meantime, thank you very much again, and
Thank you for
yeah,
having me.
good luck with the book.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and good luck with Hank.
Thank you, Giles. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.